Hello, friends. Welcome again to another episode of the POTLUCK podcast. I'm Jared Cornutt, recording possibly for the last time in Irving, Texas. Joined by Alan Murray. Matt's not here because he's busy doing ministry as opposed to the two pastors who are recording a podcast episode. Alan, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I am feeling super Baptist right now.
Why's that?
We've got a wildlife banquet, wild game banquet, sportsman's banquet, whatever you want to call it, this Saturday at church. And somebody gave me $100 and said, get whatever you need for the banquet. And I went to Walmart and I bought two giant slow cookers. I bought a 22-quart and an 18-quart slow cooker, a.k.a. a crock pot. They say oven roasters, but they're slow cookers. So I just, I got 40 quarts worth of crock pot. And so I'm feeling really Baptist right now.
That is very Baptist of you. And Alan, it's been a little while since we recorded, hasn't it?
It has. The last time I think it was just Matt and I, and we condemned you for leaving the Republic of Texas and going back to Alabama. But your life's been a little crazy. I think everybody's life is busy. Even pastors who only work an hour a week, it's a little busy sometimes.
I guess I can record a podcast episode because Sunday's my last Sunday here at the park. So if they want to fire me, I guess. Luckily, this church is so loving and so gracious. It's been a wonderful transition. But that's kind of I've been packing a house and getting everything lined up for our new house that we're moving into. But hopefully, starting this week, we will have consistent episodes of the POTLUCK podcast. And Alan, one of the things that's kind of happened while we've been waiting is we've had some breakfasts and lunches pop up for the annual meeting. Have you signed up for anything?
I have. There's 3 that I've signed up for, which is really good because they switched the days on one of them. I signed up for the Lifeway breakfast, which is really well known for its bacon. But before that, they released the NAM breakfast. They're going to do it on Wednesday, as well as a NAM luncheon. So NAM always feeds us lunch, except for when you're Jared Cornutt and your flight gets stopped. And
you still got me my swag.
I did. I'll
never forget that.
I had to twist, not quite break, but twist some arms to get NAM to go with that bag so you could have it.
You're a good man. I have signed up for, I guess it's the NAM Send Relief Breakfast. So we're going to that together. I have signed up for the Lifeway Breakfast, which is 18 and up only. Did you know that?
I did not. But it's just me and my wife, and we're both over 18, so we're good.
Okay, good. Okay. 18 and up only. They're talking about marriage. I don't know. But Ben Madrell and his wife, who Alan does know Ben exists now because you've actually met him. And so
I did not think he existed. I scared his poor wife to death. I was like, I have something I need to tell you. And she just had this look like, oh no, my husband's getting ready to be yelled at by a disgruntled pastor. And I was like, listen, I have to admit, I thought that I've confessed that you're a hologram, but I'm so glad I actually get
and so there's that. I signed up for those 2, and also the NAM lunch, and also the Send rally. So I got like 3 NAM things, and then Alan, I signed up for the Southeastern Alumni Friends, Alumni and Friends lunch. You should sign up for that. Come eat. Come here, Danny. Good lunch. That'll be great. So those are some of the things that are out there right now. Today is also, we're recording this on March the 20th. Today is Paul Chitwood's birthday, president of the IMB. So Dr. Chitwood, happy birthday to you. But Alan, that is not the only thing that has happened in Baptist life the past few weeks. Sometimes it's slow and sometimes it's not. And right now it's not slow. What happened at the EC meetings to about 6 churches, notably Saddleback Church?
They were voted to be disfellowshipped because of the role of women serving in pastoral teaching roles. In particular, not just the title of pastor, but I think that teaching role in particular.
Mm-hmm.
In view of Saddleback, were voted to be disfellowshipped, and the not current pastor of Saddleback, former pastor of Saddleback, who you sat next to at the last annual meeting,
yes,
has said that he will appeal the process because his views on women in ministry changed about 3 years ago. So Rick Warren will be appealing the decision of the executive committee, which he is allowed to do, and these other 5 churches are allowed to do as well. And so we will have ourselves a discussion on the floor in New
And a vote. And a vote, too.
And a vote.
Yeah, so I don't agree with Rick on this, but he was on a podcast with Russell Moore. I'm guessing it's that Christianity Today podcast. And he basically says, my views have changed, and it's changes from Scripture, where, he says the Great Commission, is that's not just for men, that's for women. Of course, the Great Commission is not a text about preaching in a local church. It's a call to go and evangelize to the nations. He talks about that Mary and Martha are the witnesses to the resurrection, and they go and tell the disciples. Well, being a witness to something and preaching in a local church gathering, I am unconvinced by Rick Warren's proof texting, and they seem to make a distinction that there is a difference between I would almost call it a ruling elder in your church, so a man who is making theological decisions, guiding the church, leading the church, and somebody who teaches. And it seems like Saddleback says a woman cannot be that elder in a church, but she can be a pastor. She can teach because of the Great Commission and the witness. Is that a fair summary of kind of what Rick seems to be espousing?
Yeah, I think that's it. The biggest thing he mentioned were those scriptures that you mentioned. There was another that he mentioned as well.
Yeah, he had 3. I can't remember what the other one was.
But if the Great Commission equips women to be pastors, I would think by that same hermeneutic, it would equip literally anyone who professes to be a believer in Jesus to be a pastor. And the problem is it's not a problem. It's not really a problem, but we have all of the scriptures. And so you don't get Matthew 28, 19, and 20 apart from Titus chapter 1 and 1 Timothy chapter 3.
Yeah. So, Alan, this is an interesting conversation, and it boils down to the Baptist Faith and Message, and what does it mean to be does the Baptist Faith and Message, when it talks about the office of pastor, is that referring specifically to a senior pastor? Or, at a church like yours, you're the only pastor there. At my church, where I'm at, I have pastors who they're associate pastors, and they have different titles. Does that mean a woman could have that title, pastor? It seems like we're coming to a breaking point on almost that there needs to be a revision to the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 or clarity. And then there's a question. I'm hearing a lot of guys, and I don't know what you're hearing, and they're saying, I disagree with Rick Warren 100%. I don't believe that women can be pastors in any stretch. I disagree with his text. But I also don't agree with disfellowshipping them because they don't believe this is the basis for disfellowship, that the Baptist Faith and Message is not a litmus test for cooperation. So not only do we need to really define what do we mean by pastor, what do we mean by that, and then what does it mean to be in friendly cooperation with the Southern Baptist Convention? And people will always pull out, because if we use the Baptist Faith and Message, how many churches practice open communion as opposed to closed communion? And so where do you think this is heading? Because I don't think this conversation is dying down anytime soon.
Well, the Baptist Faith and Message does not use the language of senior pastor. It says the role of pastor is reserved for men. It says actually that the scriptures teach that both men and women are gifted and called for the work of ministry. However, the role of pastor is reserved for men. I don't think that you see the language of senior pastor in the Bible. You just see the language of pastor, elder, bishop, overseers, episcopos, poimen. Those words are used interchangeably in the New Testament, especially when you get to 1 Peter chapter 5. So I don't think that you can separate the office and function of a pastor, which I know is a totally different discussion. And churches have long separated the title and function and office of pastor so that you have like the pastor of the sound system. Because they want to ordain a guy to give him a tax break and be able to give him a housing allowance and that kind of thing. And so a lot of churches may have a woman serving as a minister. They might not call her a pastor, though a lot of traditions use those terms interchangeably as well.
Let me interject right there, Alan. What do you think about that term minister? Like, I've gone to churches, worked with churches that use children's minister for a woman. Do you make a distinction between minister and pastor, or do you? I think that's confusing.
Um, I, I, I know that it happens. That word minister means servant as far as the New Testament is
Right.
concerned. We are servants of Christ Jesus. I think a lot of times it's just nuance and semantics to avoid saying that we have a woman pastor on staff.
Yeah.
Because if you have the same office, the same qualifications, the same kind of benefits, and you use a different title, whether you've got a man or woman in that role, it comes down to semantics. I know if you are in maybe a strong Reform tradition, and I mean conservative Reformed tradition, they're calling their pastors ministers. The Banner of Truth. I don't think you get any more Reformed than the Banner of Truth, right? They have an annual, three annual conferences, one in the East Coast, one in the West Coast, and one in the UK, and they're called the Banner of Truth Ministers Conference. And so when they say that, they mean people who are serving in the gospel ministry.
Yeah. So I've always said, like, if you're going to have a female kids person, one doesn't need to preach, does not need to do the things that a pastor does. And I've always said, err on the side of caution, kids ministry director, kids ministry coordinator. I believe that that word minister causes confusion because of that. And the word pastor probably should not cause confusion. But here's what it boils down to. We just voted out, I think, 5 churches that all, Saddleback, who has got women teaching and in the role of pastor, even if they disagree with how we're using that term. And then the other churches, I think, had female lead senior pastors. But how many Southern Baptist churches have women on staff with the title pastor? Even if they don't function as pastors, they have the title. Out of 47,000 churches, I bet it's more than we think.
Yeah, I definitely think it's more than you think. And I don't think that it's necessarily folks serving in shepherding roles for the whole church, which is why I don't think call somebody a pastor who's not actually pastoring. But a lot of folks that are serving in children's ministry, especially, and maybe worship ministry, and perhaps, because you can't say worship leader because that's been trademarked, or youth ministry. Those are the 3 areas I think that you see those most. Sometimes you have situations where folks are co-pastoring, husband, wife kind of situation, and that's a conversation that has to be had as well.
So where do you think this is heading, Alan? I mean, I believe that a pastor, according to Titus 1, 1:23, is a qualified man who meets the qualifications according to Scripture. And that goes for any senior pastor, associate pastor, anybody that has that title. And so I don't believe that, I believe if you're egalitarian, you're probably not in friendly cooperation. You don't believe what we believe as Southern Baptists. That's what we believe as Southern Baptists. At the same time, we don't know what it means to be friendly cooperation. And if we go down this road, are we going to have this task force that's investigating every church that has title? Where are we going? Because I don't want to do that either. So where are we go? Are we going to ask these churches, hey, clean up your titles, change the names of positions? What are we going to do?
Well, I need to go back and answer one of your previous questions about what are we bound to do. The bylaws of the Southern Baptist Convention says that churches that are cooperating need to be in like faith and practice. It does not say the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 there, but it does say like faith and practice. So then you've got to figure out what defines that. Is that the Baptist Faith and Message 2000? So some conversations are going to have to be had. They are happening, right? You've got Al Mohler, who's been talking some about the original drafting. Of course, Adrian Rogers is with the Lord. Man, it's helpful to have him right about now.
Yes, it would.
And so there's some conversation about what the folks who originally drafted it meant. But ultimately, each church is autonomous, and the Baptist Faith and Message is not binding because we're a convention of cooperating churches, not a denomination. But this is one area that I really disagree with Rick Warren. Rick Warren says that we are anti-creedal people in that podcast. That is really strong language to say that we are against creeds. You know, the old adage is, the Baptist says that we have no creed but the Bible, which is a creed. Historically, we have been creedal and confessional people. The First London Confession says this is what we believe, and we are not those crazy Anabaptists. The Second London Confession, hey, we are not Presbyterians, we are not Congregationalists, but we have more in common with you than you realize. So please stop throwing us in rivers and in jail.
Yeah.
We are not anti-creedal, we are not anti-confessional people. But at the same time, one of our Baptist distinctives is local church autonomy. And so to be Southern Baptist, you don't have to affirm the Baptist faith and message. You can affirm the 1833 New Hampshire Confession or the 25 or the 63. And so when you start running, you run into this discussion and this debate, are we going to be the doctrinal police? Are we going to say that every church that has a woman's youth minister, woman's children's pastor, do they need to be disfellowship? Because what we're doing is we are cooperating together. I don't think this is going to be solved in June.
No chance.
I think the issue with Rick Warren will be handled in June.
Yeah.
But the discussion moving forward, what constitutes and who is qualified to be a pastor, I think is going to be an ongoing discussion, not only in Southern Baptist life, but pouring over into state convention life and into associational life, because what happens in June is going to overflow into state conventions and into associations, which are oftentimes more blended than the national convention. Many state conventions still have churches that are duly cooperating with the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship and the Southern Baptist Convention. And some associations will be comprised of really three groups of churches: those that are SBC, those that are CBF, and those that are duly cooperating with both. So I think this discussion is going to be ongoing. I don't think we can tell folks, you need to clean up your titles, because we are a group of cooperating churches. This might be a good place for a non-binding resolution, right? Like the resolution that Tom Askell brought forward about having meaningful membership, cleaning up your membership. Is it binding? Absolutely not. Is it helpful? Probably. But whoever writes that needs to be really careful and really precise if they ever want to see it come out of committee and make it to the floor.
Yeah, and I agree wholeheartedly with you, Alan. We're not going to resolve all of this. There will be a vote and an appeal for Rick Warren and perhaps some other churches. I don't know what's going to happen. A lot of people have told me I think it's going to be not even close, that they're going to be kicked out. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people realize, to the point to where I'm not sure we'll be able to tell from the floor. Is my thought.
Well, Warren might be able to bring in like 11 million messengers.
I don't think he'll do that, but he'll probably bring 12 at least, right? So that's what you can bring.
But I tell you, and I know I'm a little sarcastic in this, and maybe I shouldn't be, but when you come out and say that we don't need the SBC needs us, and you single-handedly, he did.
I don't like that.
You single-handedly say, me and my 6,000 purpose-driven churches. One person cannot speak for 6,000 churches.
No.
And I alluded to it earlier. For me, I wholeheartedly recognize that pastors do not go to the Southern Baptist Convention. Messengers do. Messengers are at the Southern Baptist Convention. When you stand up, you are not a pastor. You might be a pastor, but you are speaking as a messenger from your church. And so I understand Warren is able to speak as a messenger rather than a pastor. But I would think if this issue was going on in my church and it was passionate about me and involved me and my wife as co-pastors, and my wife is certainly not a co-pastor, nor would she ever be. Why is Rick Warren speaking for Saddleback? I think I know why Warren is speaking for Saddleback, because he's Rick Warren and he's trained 11 million pastors and planted 6,000 Saddleback churches, and all the other great things that he said when he was standing next to you at the Southern Baptist Convention. You
can stop mentioning that part if you want to.
We can post the picture in the show notes. But why is Warren? That's my question. I have a lot of questions, but I just think if I was the pastor of the church that was being disfellowship, maybe I'd be the one that wanted to speak. But I haven't seen that. And maybe it's happened, and I just don't know about it.
More to come on that leading up to the convention. Lots of thoughts. I think you can kind of see where Alan and I stand on this. we'll let Matt speak for himself, but I don't think this is going to wait anytime soon. Other big news happening in Southern Baptist life, Alan. Johnny Hunt has filed a lawsuit, or excuse me, I want to make sure I get this right. Pastor Johnny has filed a lawsuit against the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee. I'm assuming it's the SBC, but it's the EC, and against Guideposts for, I'm assuming, libel, misrepresenting. In the lawsuit, he admits to having an extramarital affair. He calls the encounter an extramarital affair that lasted only a few minutes, that included kissing and awkward fondling. And so I'm just going to say it. You cannot go around for years talking about how much you love the SBC and the cooperative program and then try to take money from it because you got outed and you got caught. As embarrassing as that may be. Now, I know his argument is going to be is that, well, I'm being accused of being a sexual predator, and that's not what happened. What I had was a consensual, and that's what he is adamant about, consensual extramarital affair. Even if that is true, shame on all the churches who have scheduled him and even canceled him afterwards, but have scheduled him to preach at the church, especially since he has circumvented church discipline at his church, gone around that and been restored by his friends. But Alan, what do you make out of all this? I mean, Johnny Hunt suing the SBC, suing Guideposts. What? Can you believe it?
To answer the last question, yes, I can believe it. Man, it's just sad. I know that isn't saying a whole lot, but it's just sad that this is the world in which we're living, where the executive committee is being sued by a former president of the Southern Baptist Convention, where the North American Mission Board is being sued by another state executive. It's almost like we've got scripture that tells us how to handle this. Yeah. It's almost like we've got some letters written to the church at Corinth. And there's, it's just, it's really sad. The situation with Johnny Hunt, to me, it's heartbreaking for a lot of reasons. I know, I don't know everything that happened. He knows, the Lord knows, this lady knows. Man, it's just sad. I made the comment before, the only time 4 people should be determining somebody's fitness for ministry is if it's a church of 4 people. If we're Baptist, ordination and fitness for ministry has always been determined by the local church, and we believe that going all the way back to Acts chapter 19. Man, it just stinks. It's bringing reproach on the Southern Baptist Convention. It's bringing reproach on Johnny. It's bringing reproach on these churches that are being brought before the executive committee for. It's just, I don't know that it's doing anybody any good to just double down without seeking reconciliation. To be gospel preaching without seeking gospel reconciliation, to me is sad. I hate it. I really do. Johnny is somebody who's from my hometown, somebody who has had tremendous influence on my area, on our state convention, on the national convention. Somebody who I have respected in the past despite disagreements, and then to find all this out, and then for things just to keep going from bad to worse. I hate it. There's a lot of snarky things I could probably say. There's a lot of fleshly things I could probably say, but the biggest thing to me is it's just sad, all the reproach that it's bringing on Christ and the proclamation of the gospel.
Yeah. So, to be clear, none of us, like Alan just said, none of us know what happened in that condo, except for Johnny, this lady, and the Lord. But I think we would agree this is not the right way to go about doing this. He has admitted that at least something happened. Again, he calls it consensual. It says it was an extramarital event. I don't even know if they use the language affair in the deposition that he sent. But he believes that his name has been wronged by the Guidepost investigation, and so we'll see what happens with that. Do you think he goes to New Orleans this summer?
I don't know if he is. Who's sending him as a messenger?
I'm assuming he's a member of Southern Baptist Church, what I would assume. Perhaps one of these guys that was on his restoration team.
I don't know. And if so, not where he lives.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's the issue. Who are you coming as a messenger? You can come as a guest, but if you come as a guest, you cannot get to the microphone. So I think there's some reconciliation that needs to happen with First Woodstock. And I'm not a part of that church either.
Yep.
But put Brother Morton in a very awkward position, and probably still putting him in a very awkward position.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Well, more of that I'm sure to come in the months ahead as well. Alan, you want to lead us into our Southern culture topic?
I would. This is on a much happier note. Kind of goes back to breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Come on.
I just Publix, which is a southern grocery store chain, if you count Florida as part of the South, at least parts of it, and picked up a bunch of seasonings for the game banquet we're having on Saturday. And so I thought I'd just talk a little bit today. We could talk about some of our favorite all-purpose seasoning blends. I'm not talking about, well, we like to use garlic, we like to use pepper, but what seasoning blends, particularly those from the South, have you used a lot of that you love? What am I going to find in Jared Cornutt's pantry that you can throw in anything?
We are, and it may be sacrilegious to say, but we are a meat church family. Matt Pittman, I think it's Pittman, who started Meat Church. He is from Alabama, but he currently lives in Waxahachie, Texas, and he's got a restaurant there. But we love to throw that stuff. No, I mean, it's different. For brisket, for pork and chicken, they got all kinds of stuff. Fajitas, they got it all. And when it comes to a steak, I mean, I'm putting salt and pepper on that bad boy. That's it. And steak and eggs, things like that. But most of the seasoning that we buy is from Meat Church, and that's almost what I use exclusively. So I'm not very entertaining in that sense, but that's who I am.
Well, at least you own more than just salt and pepper.
That's true. What do you use?
There's several that I use. What I picked up today, it was 3 different types of a seasoning out of Florida called Everglades seasoning. It's an all-purpose seasoning, and then they've got a chicken and fish that I've used that's really good. They've got another one that's an all-purpose seasoning I've never had. I'm going to try it. I love Everglades. I've used like 4 bottles of it in less than a year. It's just phenomenal. I use it a lot in my outdoor cooking, indoor stuff. And then there's a couple others that stay in my cabinet that I've been using for a long time. Tony Saturays. I'm butchering that last name. I think everybody.
Good. That's good.
Tony's has got a lot of varieties. I keep some regular Tony's as well as theirs. It's called More Spice. It's a little hotter. And another good hot all-around Cajun Creole seasonings, bring it all the way back to Louisiana again, is Slap Ya Mama. Slap Ya Mama is a really good all-purpose Cajun Creole kind of seasoning as well. It's got more bite than Tony's. And so I got to keep Slap Ya Mama, got to keep Tony's and Everglades in the cabinet at all times. And when it comes to rubs and things like that, I make all my own.
I make my own. Yep, same.
Yeah,
I have my own rub that I put on. I don't make my own rub for brisket, but I make my own rub for pork.
Yeah, well, and even with brisket, I love that very traditional Texas way of coarse salt and coarse pepper. I think that's great on brisket.
Oh, I will put a lot of pepper on. The pepper's really where you get the bark on a brisket, and so I will put that on first, and then kind of go over it again with a Meat Church Holy Cow or something like that on there as well.
Well, and since we're talking about this is like bonus material. I just want to let our listeners know that you don't need binders. If you cook meat, you're smoking meat, you don't need a binder. The meat's wet. Save the mustard. Just save it for your hot dog, save it for your bologna sandwich. And the only time that I can see a binder being necessary is if you were trying to do something like smoked bologna. Other than that, the brisket is wet enough, the pork is wet enough, the chicken's wet enough. Just save the mustard and just. It
doesn't hurt to do it, but it's an unnecessary step.
Yeah, I don't know that it hurts, but it doesn't necessarily.
People think it will come out with a mustard taste. It's like, no, it doesn't come out with a mustard taste. It's a binder. It doesn't hurt to do it, but there really is no reason to do it.
Yep.
So I mean, you're already if you smoke the right way, like Alan and I do, not like some of these pellet smoker guys. If you do it the way that we do it, the way that the Lord God intended, and the way that we'll do it in heaven, it's already pretty time consuming. And so Cut that step out. You don't need to do that.
Yep. Amen.
Anything else?
Go to New Orleans.
4,000 have pre-registered, and I think there's over 20,000 hotel nights already booked. Join us in New Orleans where we'll talk about this and more. Maybe we'll see you at a breakfast. Maybe we'll see you at a lunch. And join us next time. Same Baptist time, same Baptist hour. Stay Baptist, my friends.